My wife still won't talk about what happened in DeSoto National Forest. She says if we say it out loud, it'll feel real again. But it already is. Because on October 17, 2022, less than 14 miles from the nearest paved road in Mississippi, her refusal to leave nearly got us killed by something that should not exist, and I'm done protecting her from the truth. If you've ever felt watched in the woods, if you've ever ignored that instinct telling you to leave, subscribe now. And if you think you know what this was, drop a comment, because what happened next still keeps me awake at night. My name is Daniel Marcus Holloway. I was 38 years old when this happened. I'm from Lucedale, in George County, Mississippi, born and raised. I work as an electrical line inspector, the kind of job that takes you miles away from paved roads and cell service at all hours. Before that, I volunteered with the fire department for almost a decade. I've worked wrecks at 3 in the morning, pulled people out of flipped trucks, walked into burning homes without knowing what was waiting inside. I'm not someone who panics easily. I don't scare easy. And I don't make things up. Emily, my wife, had been asking for months to get away. Just one night. No phones, no emails, no people. Our anniversary was coming up, and she wanted quiet. I told her we could find quiet closer to home, somewhere with signal, somewhere familiar. She rolled her eyes and said I was turning into an old man. We settled on DeSoto National Forest because she'd seen pictures online. It's beautiful, she said. And it's safe. We drove down Forest Service Road 304 just before sunset. The pavement ended miles back, replaced by rutted dirt and loose gravel. Pine trees pressed in on both sides, tall and straight, their tops disappearing into a gray, overcast sky. The temperature gauge on the truck read 48 degrees and falling. Humidity hung heavy, the kind that crawls under your clothes and sticks to your skin. No moon that night. Thick cloud cover swallowed what little light there was. By the time we picked a clearing near Black Creek Wilderness, it was almost dark. The place felt empty in that deep, rural Mississippi way, no distant highway noise, no airplanes, nothing but woods stretching out in every direction. I checked my phone out of habit. No signal. Emily smiled like that was the point. We set up camp by headlamp. Tent staked, lantern hung, small fire going. The woods were loud then. Crickets, frogs down near the creek, something moving through brush far off. Normal sounds. Familiar sounds. The smell of pine smoke mixed with damp leaves and cold earth. We cooked sausages over the fire and talked about work, about nothing important. I remember thinking how still the air was. No breeze at all. The smoke from the fire didn't drift. It sank, hanging low, curling around our ankles like fog. It was maybe half an hour after full dark when the first thing felt wrong. The insects stopped. Not faded. Not quieted. Stopped. Like someone flipped a switch. 1 second the woods were alive, the next there was nothing. No crickets. No frogs. Even the creek sounded muted, like it had been pushed farther away. I noticed it immediately. Emily didn't. Then there was the smell. At first I thought it was the sausages burning, but it wasn't that. It was stronger. Sharper. Wet dog mixed with something sour and rotten, like a dead animal left too long in the sun. It hit the back of my throat and made my eyes water. I stood up, turned slowly, scanning the tree line with my headlamp. "Do you smell that?" I asked. Emily shrugged. "Probably a hog. Or a dead deer. Relax." I told myself the same thing. Wild hogs were everywhere out there. Coyotes too. Even the occasional black bear, though rare. I walked a few yards from camp, shining the light along the ground. That's when I saw the print near the edge of the creek bank. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't old either. Longer than my boot. Narrow at the heel, wide at the front. I knelt down, touched the edge of it. The soil was still soft. Whatever made it was heavy. Too heavy. I counted the impressions again and again, trying to make them fit something I knew. I said, keeping my voice level. "We might want to pack it in." She sighed, loud and annoyed. "Daniel, we just got here. You're letting your imagination run." That was Emily. Practical. Stubborn. Once she decided something, it took a lot to change her mind. I didn't want to fight. Not over nothing. So I told myself I was wrong. Told myself I was tired. Told myself it was just the woods playing tricks on me. Then the air went colder. Not gradually. Suddenly, like someone opened a door and let something in. The fire crackled louder in the silence. My ears rang. I had the distinct, crawling sensation of being watched, not from one direction, but from all of them. That's when we heard it. Low. Deep. Not a howl. Not a bark. A drawn-out growl that rolled through the trees and vibrated in my chest like distant thunder. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Somewhere beyond the firelight, just past where the dark swallowed everything whole. Emily looked at me then. Really looked at me. Her face had gone pale. "What was that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I was already reaching for the Glock I kept locked in the truck. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. The growl came again, closer this time. And that was when I knew, deep down, that whatever was out there, had already found us. The sound didn't come again right away. That was worse. I stood there at the edge of the firelight, Glock in one hand, flashlight in the other, listening so hard my ears ached. The woods felt compressed. Like the darkness had weight. The flames snapped and popped too loud, every crack echoing off the trees. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and fast, and beneath it the thud of my heartbeat, heavy and uneven. Emily whispered my name. "Daniel?" "Get behind me," I said, keeping my eyes on the tree line. My voice didn't sound like mine. It came out tight, forced. "Slow. Don't run." She moved, boots crunching softly on gravel, and the sound seemed to carry forever. I hated that sound. Every tiny noise felt like a signal flare. Then it came again. A low, rolling growl, closer now. Not aggressive in the way a dog snaps. This was deeper. Controlled. It reminded me of a diesel engine idling just out of sight, a steady vibration you feel more than hear. It came from our left, maybe 40 yards out, somewhere past the creek. I swung the flashlight that way, the beam cutting through brush and tree trunks, catching nothing but shadow. That's when the smell hit us full force. It rolled in like a wave, thick and hot despite the cold air. Wet fur. Rot. Something metallic underneath it that made my mouth fill with saliva like I was about to throw up. Emily gagged, clapping a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is that?" "I don't know," I said. And that was the truth. I'd smelled dead animals before. I'd smelled bears, hogs, even human bodies on accident scenes. This was wrong. Too strong. Too alive. Something moved to our right. Not fast. Not crashing. Just a shift. Brush bending where nothing should have been pushing it. The sound of weight transferring from one foot to another. I turned the light and caught a glimpse of motion, just a shape slipping behind a tree trunk, tall enough that the beam didn't even reach its head before it was gone. Emily sucked in a sharp breath. "Daniel, that was too tall." I didn't answer her, because at that moment everything went quiet. Not just the insects. Not just the frogs. The fire seemed to dim, the flames shrinking lower, like the oxygen had been pulled out of the clearing. No wind. No leaves moving. No distant sounds at all. The silence pressed down on us so hard it made my ears ring. It felt thick. Heavy. Like wading into deep water. I've heard people talk about silence like that before. I always thought it was exaggeration. It's not. Out of that silence, something stepped forward. At first, I only saw legs. Long ones. Too long. The lantern light caught coarse, dark fur moving where knees shouldn't bend that way. The thing shifted its weight, and I realized it wasn't on all fours. It was standing up. Fully upright. The beam of my flashlight climbed its body. Thick thighs, narrow waist, a chest that looked wrong, like muscle laid over bone in a way that didn't match any animal I knew. Then the light hit its face. It had a snout. Long and narrow, like a wolf's, but the skull behind it was wrong, too broad, too upright. Its ears were set high, twitching slightly as if tracking every sound we made. And its eyes. God, its eyes. Yellow, reflective, catching the light like a predator's, but focused in a way that made my stomach drop. There was intelligence there. Not animal panic. Not confusion. Awareness. It stood there at the edge of the clearing, easily 7, maybe 7.5 feet tall, shoulders wide enough that they brushed the tree trunks behind it. Its arms hung too long at its sides, fingers ending in dark, curved claws that flexed slowly, deliberately. When it breathed, Its chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, and that low growl vibrated out of it like it was coming from deep in its ribcage. Emily made a small, broken sound behind me. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might tear something. Cold sweat ran down my spine, soaking into my shirt. My hands shook so badly I had to lock my elbows to keep the gun steady. My legs felt like they'd turned to rubber, like if I tried to run they'd fold under me. My mind scrambled for answers. Bear. It had to be a bear. A sick one. A mangy one standing up for some reason. That's what I told myself. That's what my brain tried to force into place, because the alternative was impossible. Werewolves weren't real. Dogmen weren't real. That wasn't how the world worked. But bears don't move like that. The thing took a step closer, its foot pressing into the dirt with a soft, heavy sound. I could see the ground compress under its weight. It lowered its head slightly and sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. Its eyes never left me. It knew I was the threat. It began to circle. Not fast. Not careless. It moved along the edge of the firelight, staying just far enough back that the shadows clung to it. Every time I shifted, it adjusted. When I raised the gun higher, its head tilted, curious, assessing. Testing. Daniel, Emily whispered, her voice shaking. Please. Let's go. Now. I wanted to. God, I wanted to grab her and run. But something about the way it watched us told me turning our backs would be a mistake. Predators chase. That's what they do. I took a step back toward the truck. The thing stopped. Another step. It matched me. Easy, I muttered, more to myself than to it. Easy. The growl deepened, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't angry. It was warning us. Claiming space. That's when it leaned forward slightly, muscles shifting under its fur, claws digging into the dirt. And I realized, with absolute clarity, that whatever this thing was, it wasn't just passing through. It was deciding what to do with us. For a split second, none of us moved. The thing in the tree line. Me with the gun. Emily frozen behind my shoulder, one hand gripping the back of my jacket so hard I could feel her fingers through the fabric. The fire popped and threw a spark into the darkness, and the creature's eyes tracked it with lazy precision. That was when I knew. It wasn't confused. It wasn't scared. And it wasn't bluffing. I didn't remember deciding to move. My body just did it. I took another slow step back toward the truck, keeping the Glock level, my finger tight on the trigger but not pulling. The flashlight beam shook as my hands trembled, painting the creature in uneven slices of light. It let me retreat 3 steps. On the 4th, it advanced. Not a charge. Just one long stride that closed the distance far too easily. The sound of its foot hitting the ground was heavy, deliberate. It wanted me to understand how fast it could reach us if it chose to. Emily, I said through clenched teeth, never looking away. When I say go, you run for the passenger door. Don't stop. Don't look back. She didn't answer. I heard her breathing, quick and shallow, right behind me. The creature's lips pulled back slightly, revealing teeth longer than any dog's I'd ever seen. Thick. Yellowed. Set in a jaw that looked like it could crush bone without effort. The growl dropped an octave, a sound that vibrated in my ribs and made my vision blur at the edges. That was enough. I raised the Glock and fired. The muzzle flash tore the darkness apart, a white-orange bloom that lit the clearing for a split second. The crack of the shot slammed into my ears, sharp and deafening, echoing off the trees. I felt the recoil snap back into my wrists, smelled burnt powder over the stink of the thing in front of us. I aimed low on purpose. Dirt exploded at its feet. For half a heartbeat, it didn't react at all. Then it moved. It didn't flinch away like an animal should. It lunged sideways, a blur of muscle and fur, vanishing into the trees with a speed that made my stomach drop. Branches snapped, brush tore, and then it was gone, leaving the clearing suddenly, horribly empty. Go! I shouted. Emily bolted. She ran for the truck, boots slipping on gravel, breath coming out in sharp sobs. I backed after her, sweeping the flashlight wildly, trying to track movement. My pulse roared in my ears so loud it drowned out everything else. She reached the passenger door, yanked it open, and climbed in, fumbling with the seatbelt. I circled around the tailgate, eyes scanning the darkness, every shadow looking like it might surge forward at any second. That's when I heard it again. Not behind us. Ahead. A heavy thump landed on the truck bed, metal groaning under sudden weight. The whole vehicle rocked. I spun, heart leaping into my throat, and saw claws scraping across the paint, leaving bright, ugly lines in the lantern light. It had circled us. It had known where we were going. "Daniel!" Emily screamed. I dove for the driver's door, throwing myself inside and slamming it shut just as something massive dropped down in front of the headlights. The hood dipped hard, suspension creaking, and the windshield filled with fur and teeth. Its face was inches from the glass. I could see every detail now. Coarse fur matted with dirt and something dark near its jaw. A scar running along one side of its snout. Breath fogging the windshield in thick, hot bursts that smelled like rotten iron. Its eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, pupils narrow and focused. I couldn't breathe. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that shook the cab, a sound so loud and deep it felt like it punched straight through my chest. Emily screamed beside me, curling into herself, hands over her ears. I slammed the key into the ignition and twisted. Nothing. The engine coughed once and died. My vision tunneled. My hands were slick with sweat, fingers slipping on the steering wheel. The creature reared back, claws scraping down the hood, metal screeching in protest. I heard something tear. The side mirror exploded inward, glass spraying across the door. "Come on, I muttered, slamming my foot on the brake, turning the key again. The engine turned over. The truck roared to life just as the thing leapt off the hood, disappearing into the darkness to our right. I didn't wait to see where it went. I threw the truck into reverse, gravel spraying, tires spinning as I fought for traction. The creature hit us again. Not head-on this time. From the side. The impact rocked the truck hard enough that Emily slammed into the door, crying out. I felt the jolt through the frame, heard metal crunch. In the headlights, I caught a glimpse of its body streaking past, moving on two legs, then dropping to all fours as it vanished into the trees. I floored it. The truck fishtailed, straightened, and tore down the forest road, engine screaming. Branches whipped past the windows. Headlights bounced wildly over ruts and dips, turning the road into a strobe of light and shadow. For a few seconds, there was nothing behind us. Then something kept pace in the trees. I saw it in flashes, movement parallel to the road, faster than the truck should have been able to go on that terrain. A dark shape weaving between trunks, keeping up effortlessly. Every time I thought it fell back, it surged forward again, closer. It's still there, Emily sobbed. Daniel, it's still there. I know, I said, gripping the wheel so hard my hands ached. A shape burst out of the woods ahead, landing in the road for a split second, fully illuminated. Tall. Upright. Blocking our path. I swerved on instinct, the truck bouncing as we barely missed it. In the side mirror, I saw it turn, watching us go, head tilting slightly like it was amused. My lungs burned. My jaw hurt from clenching it so tight. Every nerve in my body screamed that this wasn't over, that it was still deciding how far it wanted to take this. And deep down, I knew something else too. This wasn't a chase. It was a hunt. The road stretched ahead of us in a narrow tunnel of bouncing light, gravel and dirt blurring beneath the tires as the truck rattled and screamed. I didn't know how fast we were going, 30, 40, maybe more, but it felt reckless and not nearly fast enough. Every rut sent a jolt through the steering wheel, every low branch scraping the roof sounded like claws coming back for us. For a minute, maybe two, there was nothing behind us. I almost believed we'd outrun it. Then the woods to our left exploded with movement. Not crashing. Not random. Something parallel to us, pacing us again. I caught glimpses of it in the peripheral flash of the headlights as the road curved, dark mass, upright silhouette, then dropping low and surging forward. It moved like it knew the terrain. Like it had run this road before. My stomach twisted with the realization that this wasn't panic driving it. It was control. Emily had both hands locked into the dashboard now, knuckles white, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for impact. She wasn't screaming anymore. That scared me more. Her breathing came in short, sharp pulls, each one rattling, like she couldn't get enough air. I thought you said this road went out, she whispered. It does, I said, though my voice wavered. It does. The fog started to roll in just past midnight. At first it was thin, a low mist hugging the ground, but within minutes it thickened into heavy bands that swallowed the headlights at the edges. The beams cut tunnels through it, everything beyond 10 feet dissolving into gray nothing. My windshield began to bead with moisture, the wipers squeaking uselessly as I turned them on. The creature howled. The sound came from behind us, deep and long, rising and falling in a way that made my skin crawl. Not a wolf's howl. Too controlled. Too resonant. It echoed through the trees and seemed to come from everywhere at once, bouncing off trunks and disappearing into the fog. Emily let out a strangled sob. It's calling something. That thought hadn't crossed my mind until she said it. I pressed harder on the gas. The road curved sharply, and I took it too fast, the truck sliding sideways, tires losing grip. My heart lurched into my throat as the back end fishtailed toward a stand of trees. I fought the wheel, muscles burning, and somehow brought it back in line. The smell of hot rubber filled the cab. Behind us, something hit the ground hard. I heard it through the floorboards, a heavy thump followed by the scrape of claws tearing into dirt and gravel. The truck rocked again, not from impact this time, but from the vibration of something landing and pushing off with terrifying power. It was closer now. I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. Yellow eyes flared in the darkness, reflecting the faint glow of our taillights. They weren't wild. They weren't frantic. They were steady, fixed, and gaining. "Daniel," Emily whispered, her voice small. "Please." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was too tight, my jaw locked so hard it ached. My hands were numb on the steering wheel, fingers tingling like they'd fallen asleep. The creature surged forward and slammed into the back of the truck. The impact jolted us violently, sending Emily's head snapping back against the seat. Something metal screeched, then tore free. The truck lurched, engine revving as the tires fought for traction again. I screamed, actually screamed, as adrenaline flooded my system. It hit us again, claws raking across the tailgate, the sound like a forklift dragging steel across concrete. I could feel it through the frame, every scrape vibrating up my arms. The smell of that thing filled the cab again, stronger than before, seeping in through vents and cracks, hot and foul. "Hold on!" I shouted, though there was nothing to hold on to but fear. The creature dropped away suddenly, the pressure gone as fast as it had come. For a split second, the silence returned, thick and suffocating even inside the roaring cab. My ears rang. Then it appeared ahead of us. Not in the road this time, on the embankment to the right, running upright, keeping pace effortlessly. The fog parted around its body as it moved, like it was displacing the air itself. I could see the flecks of muscle beneath its fur, the way its long arms pumped in rhythm with its stride. It turned its head and looked at us as it ran. That look wasn't rage. It was curiosity. It veered suddenly, cutting across the road in front of us, forcing me to slam on the brakes. Gravel sprayed as the truck skidded to a stop, headlights flaring against a wall of trees. The engine stalled with a choking cough. For half a second, everything froze. Then the creature stepped into the road. Fully upright. Calm. Blocking our path like it owned the place. Fog curled around its legs, the headlights illuminating every detail now, the matted fur, the scars, the long fingers flexing slowly at its sides. It tilted its head, nostrils flaring, and took a step toward the hood. Emily made a broken sound beside me, something between a whimper and a prayer. I raised the Glock again, hands shaking so hard I thought I might drop it. My mouth tasted like metal and bile. I couldn't tell if the wetness on my face was sweat or tears. "Get back," I yelled, my voice cracking. "Get back." It didn't. Instead, it leaned forward slightly, muscles bunching, eyes locked on me with that same terrible intelligence. It wasn't rushing. It wasn't attacking. It was waiting. Waiting for me to make the wrong move. My mind raced, every option terrible. Reverse and risk losing control in the fog. Shoot and hope it mattered. Sit still and let it decide our fate. I thought of the print by the creek. The way it had circled the camp. The way it had known where we were going before we did. This thing wasn't reacting to us. It had been planning. Somewhere far off, a faint gray line began to bleed into the sky, barely noticeable through the fog. Not light. Not yet. Just the suggestion of it. The creature noticed it too. It lifted its head, sniffing the air, eyes flicking briefly toward the horizon before returning to me. The growl in its chest softened, dropping to a low rumble, almost contemplative. It took one last step closer, close enough that I could see condensation on its fur from its own breath. Then it stopped. And for the first time since this began, I felt something else beneath the fear. Hope. Because whatever this thing was, whatever rules it followed, the night was starting to lose its grip. And it knew it. The creature stood there in the road, framed by our headlights and the thinning fog, close enough now that I could see the slow rise and fall of its chest. Its breath puffed out in thick white clouds, drifting back toward us. The growl in its throat had softened into something lower, steadier, like an engine idling down. It wasn't charging. It wasn't retreating either. It was deciding. My foot hovered over the brake, leg shaking so badly it felt like it might give out. The Glock felt impossibly heavy in my hands, the front sight bobbing with every breath I took. I could taste blood where I'd bitten the inside of my cheek, mixed with that coppery tang of fear that coated my tongue. Emily was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, shoulders trembling. She didn't look at the thing in front of us. She stared straight ahead, eyes unfocused, like if she didn't see it, it couldn't be real. The creature's eyes flicked past me, just for a moment, toward her. Something in its posture changed. Its shoulders rolled forward slightly. One long foot shifted, claws digging into the dirt road, carving shallow grooves. The air felt tight, electric, like the second before a lightning strike. My heart hammered so hard it hurt, each beat slamming against my ribs. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if it moved again, there would be no stopping it. I fired. This time I didn't aim for the ground. The shot exploded inside the cab, deafening in the confined space. The muzzle flash blinded me for a split second, burning white spots into my vision. The recoil snapped my wrists back, pain shooting up my arms. I smelled gunpowder and burned oil and something else, hot fur. The creature roared. Not in pain. In rage. It lunged. Time slowed down in that impossible way people talk about, every detail stretching out, sharp and clear. I saw its body surge forward, muscles coiling and releasing with terrifying power. I saw its claws reach for the hood, inches from the windshield. I saw its mouth open wide, teeth bared, saliva stringing between them. I slammed my foot on the gas. The truck leapt forward, engine screaming, tires spitting gravel as we surged straight at it. The impact came an instant later, an explosion of sound and force as something massive slammed into the side of the truck instead of the front. The cab jolted violently, throwing me sideways into the door. Emily screamed as we were flung hard against our seatbelts. Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. I fought the wheel blindly, vision tunneling, heart trying to burst out of my chest. The truck fishtailed, tires losing grip, then caught again. In the side mirror, I saw the creature roll across the road, hit the ditch, and disappear into the brush in a flurry of fog and broken branches. Go. 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 Emily sobbed. I didn't need telling. I kept the pedal pinned to the floor. The road blurred beneath us, headlights bouncing wildly as the sky ahead began to lighten, not fully dawn yet, but enough to stain the clouds a dirty gray. My arms burned from gripping the wheel so hard. My lungs felt like they were on fire. Every muscle in my body shook with adrenaline and terror. For several long seconds, nothing followed. I dared to believe it was over. Then something heavy landed on the truck again. Not on the hood this time. On the roof. The metal above us bowed inward with a sickening crunch, dust and bits of insulation raining down inside the cab. The weight pressed down hard, flattening the suspension, and the truck swayed dangerously. I heard claws scraping across steel, searching for purchase. Emily screamed my name, over and over, her voice breaking. I glanced up just as one massive hand slid into view through the cracked windshield, claws digging into the roofline. The thing hauled itself forward, and its face appeared above us, upside down, eyes blazing, teeth snapping inches from the glass. I let go of the wheel with one hand and fired straight up through the windshield. The shot shattered the remaining glass, the sound tearing through the cab like a bomb. The creature recoiled, snarling, and lost its grip. Its weight slid backward, claws screeching as it tore free chunks of metal, then it was gone, tumbling off the roof and disappearing behind us. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. The fog began to thin as the sky brightened, the gray giving way to pale blue at the horizon. Trees flashed by, their shapes becoming clearer, more solid, like the world was snapping back into focus after a nightmare. The road straightened, and then, finally, I saw it. Pavement. The dirt gave way to asphalt with a jolt that rattled the truck, the sound different, solid, real. I crossed onto it without easing up, tires humming instead of screaming. My whole body sagged with relief so intense it almost made me dizzy. In the mirror, the forest receded. At the edge of the trees, just where the road curved away, something tall stood watching us. It didn't follow. It didn't move closer. It just stood there, partially hidden by trunks and shadow, its outline unmistakable even in the growing light. It raised its head once, slowly, like it was memorizing us. Then it stepped back and vanished into the woods. I didn't stop driving until we hit the first gas station outside Wiggins, lights blazing bright against the early morning gloom. I pulled into the lot, threw the truck into park, and just sat there, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My hands cramped, fingers locked around the steering wheel. Emily broke first. She collapsed against me, sobbing, her whole body trembling as the fear finally poured out of her. I held her, even though my arms felt weak and useless, even though my own chest heaved as I tried to breathe past the knot of terror lodged there. I stepped out of the truck on legs that barely held me and nearly vomited on the concrete, while burning my throat. When I straightened, my reflection stared back at me in the gas station window, pale, hollow-eyed, streaked with blood and grime, looking like someone who had barely crawled out of a wreck. We were alive. Barely. As the sun finally broke over the horizon, washing the world in pale gold, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever had hunted us that night wasn't gone. It had simply let us leave. And that was somehow more terrifying than if it had tried to finish the job. The adrenaline didn't wear off when the sun came up. If anything, the daylight made it worse. We sat in that gas station parking lot for nearly an hour, the engine ticking as it cooled, the smell of burned rubber and hot oil still clinging to the truck. Neither of us said much. Emily stared straight ahead, wrapped in my jacket like it was armor. I kept replaying the night in my head, frame by frame, waiting for my brain to tell me it hadn't been real. It didn't. When the shaking finally slowed enough for me to drive again, we went straight to the sheriff's office in Wiggins. I remember the fluorescent lights feeling too bright, the air inside too clean, like we'd stepped into a different world. I tried to explain what happened in a calm, logical order. Forest Road. Campsite. Being followed. The thing in the road. I watched the deputy's face as I talked. At first it was concern. Then confusion. Then something closing off. A bear, he said eventually, nodding to himself. Black bear. They get aggressive sometimes. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just asked if someone could come back out with us. To look. To document the damage. To his credit, he did. We drove back toward the Soto National Forest mid-morning, the sun high enough now to burn off most of the fog. The woods looked normal again. Too normal. Birds were back, calling from the treetops. Wind moved through the pines. If I hadn't seen the damage on the truck with my own eyes, I would have doubted myself. The clearing was exactly where we'd left it. Our camp was trashed. The fire pit had been kicked apart, stones scattered like toys. The tent was collapsed, one side ripped open in long, uneven tears. Not clean slices. Ragged. Violent. The smell hit us as soon as we stepped out of the truck, stale smoke, crushed pine needles, and underneath it, that same musky rot, faint but unmistakable. The deputy crouched near the creek bank first. That's a big print, he muttered. Big was an understatement. The track was pressed deep into the soft ground, the outline clear now in daylight. 5 toes. Not 4. Not a paw. 5 distinct impressions, each ending in a deep puncture where claws had dug in. I laid my boot next to it. The print was a good 3 inches longer. 14 inches, easy. The stride between prints was just over 6 feet, measured heel to heel, crossing the bank at an angle like whatever made them had an even broken stride. The deputy frowned but didn't say anything. We found more. Scratches on the trees around the clearing, long vertical gouges cut into the bark at chest height, my chest height. Whatever made them had been standing upright when it did it. On the truck, the damage was worse in daylight. Deep claw marks scored through the paint and into the metal, some nearly 8 feet off the ground. The roof was dented inward where the weight had landed, the metal creased and warped. The passenger side mirror was gone completely, wires hanging loose. The deputy ran his fingers over one of the gouges, whistling softly. That's something, he said. We found hair too. Dark, coarse strands snagged on the broken edge of the mirror housing and stuck in the splintered bark near the tent. Thicker than deer hair. Coarser than dog fur. I wrapped them carefully in a paper towel while the deputy watched, his jaw tight. No bears around here big enough to do this, he admitted finally. Not like this. I felt a grim flicker of relief at that. Validation, even if it was small. The official report didn't reflect it. By the time we left, the explanation had shifted to unknown animal activity and possible multiple species involvement. The deputy suggested we file an insurance claim and avoid remote camping for a while. He didn't take the hare. He didn't photograph the tracks beyond a few quick shots on his phone. It was easier that way. The physical injuries showed up later that afternoon. Bruises blooming across my ribs and shoulder where the seatbelt had slammed me. A cut on Emily's forehead from flying glass that needed a few stitches at urgent care. The doctor asked what happened. I told him we hit a deer. He nodded and didn't press. That night, neither of us slept. Every sound outside the house made me sit up, heart racing. Wind through the trees behind our place sounded wrong now. The neighbor's dog barking sent a spike of fear through my chest so sharp it made my hands shake. Emily cried quietly beside me, turning away whenever I tried to touch her. In the days that followed, I started looking. Not obsessively at first. Just enough to reassure myself there was an explanation. I searched for bear attacks in Mississippi. Feral dogs. Escaped exotics. Nothing fit. The size. The behavior. The intelligence. Then I found the other stories. Different states. Different years. Same details. Upright movement. Yellow eyes. The smell. The way it stalked instead of charging. The way it tested before attacking. People called it different things, dogman, werewolf, something else, but the patterns were too consistent to ignore. There were reports near Black Creek going back decades. Hushed conversations. Old forum posts. Locals warning hunters not to stay out past dark. Livestock killed and left half-eaten. Footprints dismissed as hoaxes. I showed Emily. She closed the laptop and pushed it away, hands shaking. Stop, she whispered. Please. I don't want to know. The thing is, knowing didn't make it better. It made it worse. Because now I understood that what we encountered wasn't random. It wasn't lost. It wasn't desperate. It had known the area. Known the road. Known how to cut us off. Known when to back off as the night ended. That realization changed something in me. I stopped hiking alone. I stopped taking night inspection jobs in remote areas. I started carrying a weapon everywhere the law allowed, even on short walks near the tree line. Sleep came in fragments, broken by dreams where headlights cut through fog and yellow eyes stared back at me from just beyond reach. Emily wouldn't go near the woods at all. We didn't talk about that night. Not really. Not in detail. But sometimes I'd catch her staring out the window at dusk, face tight, listening. Listening for something she hoped she'd never hear again. Whatever it was that hunted us didn't leave a body. It didn't leave answers. It left dents in metal, scars in trees, and a mark on our lives that hasn't faded. And the worst part, the part that still crawls under my skin when I think about it, is this. Nothing about the evidence suggested it was the only one. 6 months passed, but the night never really stayed behind us. On paper, life went back to normal. I went back to work. Emily went back to her routine. Bills got paid. Groceries got bought. People asked how our anniversary trip went, and we gave the same rehearsed answer every time. It was fine. Just needed rest. The lie slipped out easily, but it never felt clean. It sat in my chest like a stone. The truth was, I was different. I noticed it first in small ways. The way I parked under streetlights now, even at home. The way I automatically scanned tree lines when I drove rural roads, eyes flicking to shadows without thinking. I couldn't stand having the windows open at night anymore. Every unfamiliar sound pulled me out of whatever I was doing and snapped me to attention, heart racing, muscles tight. Sleep never came all at once. I'd drift off for an hour, maybe 2, then jolt awake convinced I'd heard something outside. Not dreams, memories. Headlights cutting through fog. The sound of claws scraping metal. That deep, vibrating growl that felt like it lived inside my ribcage now. Sometimes I'd sit up in bed and realize I was holding my breath, listening. Emily changed too, though she'd never admit it. She stopped arguing with me about leaving places early. If we were out past dusk and I said it was time to go, she grabbed her things without a word. She avoided roads that ran near heavy woods. When friends suggested camping trips or cabin weekends, she smiled politely and found excuses. I caught her flinching once when a neighbor's dog stood up on its hind legs against a fence, barking. We never talked about that night directly. But sometimes, late, when the house was quiet and the world felt thin, she'd ask questions sideways. Do you think animals can plan? Do you think some places are just wrong? Do you ever think it followed us? Those questions scared me more than the answers. A few weeks after the incident, I drove past the turnoff for Forest Service Road 304 by accident. I hadn't meant to. Muscle memory took over before my brain caught up. The sign stood there like it always had, faded green, bullet-pocked, half hidden by weeds. I felt my chest tighten. For a moment, I thought about turning in. About seeing it in daylight again, proving to myself that it was just a place. Just dirt and trees and silence. My hand hovered near the turn signal. Then I remembered the way it had stood in the road. Calm. Patient. Watching. I kept driving. Not long after that, I started hearing things. Not sounds, reports. A co-worker mentioned a rancher near the county line who'd lost 2 goats overnight, found half-eaten and dragged deep into the trees. A post circulated in a local Facebook group about something tall crossing a road just before dawn, forcing a driver to slam on the brakes. The comments were full of jokes and emojis, people calling it a prank or a deer standing up. I didn't comment. I knew better. Once, late one night, I stepped out onto our back porch because I couldn't sleep. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of damp earth and pine. The woods behind our property were quiet, not dead quiet, but muted, like everything was holding its breath. I stood there longer than I should have, listening, heart slowly picking up speed. For just a second, I thought I caught a sound. Low. Far off. Not close enough to panic over. Not clear enough to identify. I went back inside and locked the door. I've spent a lot of time since then thinking about what that thing was. Not in the movie sense. Not curses or transformations or legends. I don't believe in that. I believe in flesh and bone. In muscle and instinct. In predators that have learned how to survive by staying hidden. Whatever it was, it belonged there. We didn't. That's the part people don't like to hear. They want monsters to be intruders, aberrations, mistakes. Something outside the natural order. But everything about that encounter told me the opposite. It knew the forest. Knew the roads. Knew when to push and when to stop. It didn't kill us when it easily could have. It tested us. Pressured us. And then, when the rules of the night began to change, it let us go. That thought still makes my stomach twist. I'm telling this story now because silence protects the wrong things. Because someone else might be planning a quiet night away, scrolling through pictures of trees and creeks, thinking it's safe. It's just nature. Because I wish someone had told me to trust that first feeling, the one that crawls up your spine and tells you something is wrong before your brain catches up. If you ever feel watched in the woods, you probably are. If the air goes still and the sounds disappear, leave. If you smell something foul and unfamiliar where it doesn't belong, don't second guess it. And if you ever find yourself 14 miles from pavement, standing in firelight while something intelligent watches from the dark, understand this. You are not the top of the food chain out there. I don't know what we encountered in DeSoto National Forest. I don't know how many there are, or how long they've been there. I only know that it's still out there, somewhere beyond the trees, moving through the same shadows it always has. Every time I drive past a stretch of woods at night, part of me is back on that road, fog pressing in, headlights shaking, yellow eyes reflecting in the dark. The forest remembers. And so do I.